I do love Jack Leiter. I mean, I've been rooting for him since back he was in college. He went viral for a YouTube video a few years back as well, so I kind of got introduced to him early. A 9 ERA, a nearly 9 ERA, and like about 40 innings. Like I kind of couldn't justify putting anyone else in there.
All right. Jacob Rogers, my friend, is the creator behind Made the Cut on YouTube, and he puts out awesome videos, a lot of really deep dives, numbers wise, into some past legends, and then a lot of current event stuff. So Jacob, first off, great to have you. Great job on everything that you do over at Made the Cut. Encourage everyone to go check out your videos. And we particularly chose one today that the guys want to kick around. So first off, thanks for joining us, but give us a little intro into one of your latest videos and we'll ask some follow-ups.
For sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. I mean, it's an honor to get to talk to a couple of guys I grew up watching, as well as you, of course. I will say, generally when I'm doing a video like this, right, like when we're talking about the worst player in every team, I'm going to build basically almost like a set of things I'm looking for a worst player, right? A set of rules. Like, I don't think it's fair to look at a guy, let's say, who's played 40 games and say that he could be considered the worst player for his team, right? So I make like a list of that, and then I'll go through and look at some criteria. I do look at some of the newer age stuff, like the WARs, OPS pluses, stuff like that. But I mean, I do consider stuff like batting average as well, slash lines and stuff like that. You try to balance it all out, right? I mean, I am somebody who values new age stuff, but on top of that, I mean, you can't throw out the old stuff just because, you do have some of these new valuation metrics, in my opinion.
All right, so I got a bone to pick with the Rangers. Jack Leiter, my boy, he lives right there. Jersey guy. He didn't get a whole year, and why is he the worst guy on the Rangers?
Honestly, I batted him around a lot, right? Because it was like almost like I mentioned that you had to play at least a third of the year. For him, he pitched half of his games were starts and half of his games were relief appearances. So I had a little bit of a different standard for relievers. Relievers had to be around 15 games, 20 games. And the starters had to be around like 15 starts. So it added up to being around 15 games. But when it came down to it, I mean, one of the things I said in the beginning of this video, in the beginning of all my videos, is basically that final discretion's up to me because I am the creator. So it's like, as much as I do love Jack Leiter, I mean, I've been rooting for him since back he was in college. He went viral for a YouTube video a few years back as well. So I kind of got introduced to him early. A 9 ERA, a nearly 9 ERA, and like about 40 innings. Like I kind of couldn't justify putting anyone else in there when you give up almost a run in that time. But I mean, like I said, I do love his stuff. I think that he has a chance to be almost like Kumar Rocker. They both went to Vandy. I think they both have a good chance to be really good on that Texas team.
All right, so Jacob, let's show some of the selections that you made on the screen so people can start to get their blood boiling if need be, or be like, yeah, that is spot on. I mean, most of the blood boiling is actually going to be like, I watched this guy all year and it was painful. So we'll just throw up a few lists. We can show AL or NL East. We'll go there first. Taijuan Walker, Adam Duvall on the Braves, Walker on the Phillies, of course, TJ Stewart on the Mets, Nats with Eddie Rosario, Nick Gordon for the Marlins. And Kratz, also, as I'm reading some of these, is there a particular player that you wanted to ask about? Because we can show that board of that player too. I mean, on the AL East, we've got DJ LeMahieu for the Yankees, Craig Kimbrell coming from the Orioles, Emmanuel Valdez for the Red Sox, Christopher Morel for the Rays. The Blue Jays have Bo Bichette. But let's bring in Kratz for a sec. Kratz, is there a particular player you wanted to ask about?
I wasn't going to ask my particular player first. I was going to ask about the fact that you chose WAR, because we have that discussion all the time. I'm not going to put you on the spot and say, how is WAR calculated? Because unless you have a degree from NASA, you couldn't do it. So that's fine. But if you said, okay, I got to take WAR out of it, what stat would you go to next? And then I'll ask my particular one person.
If I had to go to a stat after that, honestly, it's tough, right? Because when you're trying to build like a look at these guys, right? A lot of it's the overall nature of their game. Like, I mean, some of these guys, like I think I actually picked for the Marlins Tim Anderson. I mentioned Nick Gordon at the beginning, but I did pick Tim Anderson. He was good defensively, right? But he was horrible at the plate. So I probably would default to something like an OPS plus, which again is a fairly advanced stat in and of itself. But from there, I mean, if I'm looking at almost like a more basic stat as an overall judgment for a position player, probably OPS, I think, is the one I look at the most.
Okay, I like that. And when you come up with a list like this, I need you to come up with the overall worst pitcher and the overall worst hitter too, because the whole time I was watching the video, I'm like, oh man, I need the one person that was the worst, because I can go through and look at the list and see, okay, Brandon Drury had the what would I say? The worst WAR, the highest worst WAR. I think it's -2. But who would be your worst position player and your worst pitcher from this list? Overall, MVPs. Or
well, it's funny enough. You literally hit on it. I'm actually doing a video on a worst pitcher today. I've been going through and kind of doing that. Brandon Drury, in my opinion, was the worst hitter, and I did a video, a shorter video, a couple days back on him. And I'm actually working on one today for Bobby Miller, who would be my worst pitcher, unfortunately. It's crazy, man, to see him go from having like a 99 mile per hour average pitching velocity and having one of the best changeups in baseball to throwing up again like a near 9 WAR in about 56 innings. It's crazy. He allowed more earned runs last year than he had strikeouts in 13 starts. Like, absolutely nuts. But again, I mean, kind of like Leiter, I really hope he can turn it around, man, because both him and then their center fielder from last year as well, or the year before that as well, rookie, man, I really want to see the Dodgers have some of those guys develop, because they could be big stars on a team that already has a lot of big guys, including Hall of Famers on the team. So for sure, I want to see them be more well-rounded.
I like that. And I also, I like how in the video you're kind of like, well, this guy's number wasn't as bad, but he's making $20 million a year. So you think about the like Taijuan Walker compared to Bobby Miller, who Bobby Miller is on the league minimum and Taijuan Walker's on like a billionaire's minimum. So my gripe with you is the Wader, Tyler Wade. Tyler Wade's on this list. Did you add him on the list? And you kind of mentioned it in your video. The Padres didn't have a lot to choose from. So did you just pick him because of the WAR, or because I saw Campusano's numbers and I was like, I feel like Campusano maybe should have been on there, but maybe it's because T. Wade and I are friends. I don't know.
Well, first of all, I will say I really like Tyler Wade. I'd love to see him run the bases a little bit more. Dude's fast as hell. He's got some great versatility. The only reason I ended up picking him, and you mentioned on it yourself, the Padres didn't actually have a lot of like really poor performers in the team. They had some really good depth last year. Speaking of almost like the Dodgers right there, they had some really good depth in a way superior even to the Dodgers in terms of their overall depth. And I really liked Campusano the year before. Last year was disappointing, but at the end of the day, he's a catcher, right? And you, Kratz, you know, as a catcher, right? The standards are a little bit different. His hitting numbers, I guess, overall were a little bit better than Wade's. But when you're a guy who's like almost like that utility guy, and I even mentioned that, like, you don't have a high expectation for him. But if you have to pick somebody, I guess you got to go with the guy who had like a -0.6 WAR, if I'm not mistaken, like 70-some games. But again, it speaks more to the depth of the team than it does to anything to do with Wade, who, again, I'm a big fan of.
All right. Jacob, this is the last thing. It's more of a comment than a question. I want you to look at this face, because over the parts of 11 seasons that I played in the big leagues, I would have probably been on your list about 9 of those seasons. Okay, so just so you know, when you're doing this and you're putting it down, I have a mom who has a Google search of my name. She would have found your video and been like, I really don't like that Jacob person. I do think Eric should play better. Okay, so just so you know, all these people on this list, they have parents, they have friends, and they're not big Jacob fans, but they did watch your video, so that's good.
Fair enough, man. I have to say, I mean, you had some highlights, man. The knuckleball stuff, and that's one of the questions I wanted to ask coming on here. I mean, do you think you had a nastier knuckleball than Todd?
Oh, easily. Todd's was a gimmick. Todd's a gimmick. Todd's was an everyday player. I came out and had an elite pitch. That was the only time that I was an above-average hitter when I was pitching. That was the only time, because I was listed as a pitcher, and so my hitting was way above the average pitcher's hitting.
Oh yeah, you're pumping 85 too. I remember that. Some of those highlights. That was pretty impressive for a guy that, coming out of the.
That's easy. That's easy. Coming from behind the dish. Yeah, that's easy. Todd, he ain't got nothing on me. I would definitely have struck Todd out. I know that.
What's your ERA in the big leagues?
Dog, I got like 7 innings. We figured it out before. Hang on. I'll find it. I gave a few runs.
Yeah, I didn't give up any, and I got a strikeout. So there you have it. Scott, your question next, bud.
Thank you.
I have 3 strikeouts. 5.4, 5.14 ERA.
There you go.
I'm in the Hall of Fame. Scott, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, I couldn't pitch or hit, but I can ask questions. So first was more of a comment, and then I'll ask about a particular player. So just for people to get an idea of of how Jacob puts these together and really voices them. You have a good voice. It's kind of calm. It makes it easy to go through the video. But I wrote down some of the words because you're going through so many players and they all had pretty bad seasons. And you're not just going to say every single person was bad. So there was a baffling, there was atomically bad, there was undeniably awful, abysmal, unholy, atrocious. And my favorite line was about a team. He said the Rays lineup was a roster full of players you couldn't pick out of a police lineup. But he said it so casually. So you're just like, okay, it's not like a total rip fest. It's just like, just being honest, no one knew these guys. So anyway, that was my comment. My question is about a particular player on this list who I had to actually look up and go, damn, I was going to pay attention to him and I didn't pay close enough attention. Noelvi Marte got popped for roids. We barely seen him in the bigs. He was a monster in the minors. Keyword monster. Comes back. Looks terrible. So can you give us a little insight on what you saw there? And for Reds fans in particular, I'm wondering if they should be concerned that they didn't get to see the real version of him until just now.
Honestly, I think that this ends up being a question that's a contemporary question with roids. I mean, you guys were talking about roids before I came on as well. And I mean, as I'm sure you guys have talked to some of those guys in the past that have done roids and stuff, it's like it's not going to have that huge of an effect on like with an 80-game suspension or something like that. It's like he was like pumped full of stuff like they were back in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? So to me, it's almost like Tatis Jr. He came back in 2023. He had kind of a rough year at the plate. I think it's harder to get back into the swing of things, having all that time off at the plate than it is in the field. And Marte's never been a great fielder, but I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily something to worry about for him. Honestly, I'd be way more concerned with the walk to strikeout ratio, right? Because that's something where it's like the quality of contact, all that. I think that'll recover. I don't think he was a player built on roids. I think more than likely it was something like a winter league supplement type of situation. I doubt that he was intentionally doing it. But with that being said, I mean, if you can't control your walk to strikeout ratio at the big league level, especially when you're a third baseman, right, who's got to get on base a decent portion of the time to justify maybe not the most defensive value, that's what I'd really be concerned about. But I mean, I think it's kind of early. I mean, this is his second year. He had that pretty significant struggle to do with roids and being out all that time. I wouldn't close the book on him yet, but I think probably for 2025, something's going to be in the middle of what 2023 was, which was really impressive. And then 2024, hopefully at least he can build on something, maybe get close to an 800 OPS.
All right, Jacob, I gotta argue a little bit of what you said. You said they were pumping themselves full of stuff in the early 2000s. I saw the early 2000s and the gorilla, vials that guys were getting and juicing themselves up. And then I saw the synthetic stuff later on. The synthetic stuff was way better, way safer. And so anybody who does it now is way better and it's better timed. Before it was like, dudes are just like, yeah, I just want to get big biceps and hit dingers. And it not only does it affect you physically, well, I guess eyes are physical, your vision, your reaction time changes on this stuff. So not making good plate decisions, not making good, reactions as quick, that's the game. You can concentrate better on that stuff. Everything is enhanced. I even saw guys need to go down prescription in their contacts when they were on the sauce.
That's crazy. I didn't really know about the eye affecting stuff. I mean, I think most people, and this is also an interesting moment, I think, for some people who are listening to this, we conceptualize it as almost like you get an extra 20 feet to your fly balls, right? That's the effect, right? Or you get an extra 0.5 on your sprint speed or something. You're not really thinking about it in terms of like being able to have sharper vision and stuff like that. That's crazy. With that being said, Marte, I mean, I will say that I do think we saw it in the minor leagues the year before, kind of like what Scott said. He does have a lot of raw potential, right? So I do think that he is better than what he showed last year. But I mean, with that being said, I do appreciate that comment. It might be a bit more of a decline even than an 800 OPS. That's really fair.
Yeah, it's a science project. We'll see what happens with him. There's some really other, interesting insights, obviously, from others. We mentioned earlier on the show, Maldonado. There's a good discussion about Jose Abreu, but it doesn't qualify. So anyway, that's enough. Everyone, go watch the video. Check it out later on Made the Cut. Just search it on YouTube. Jacob, great to have you on here, man. I'd love to have you back. Slice up another video, all right?
Sounds great, man. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Thank you. You're the man. Happy holidays, FT fan.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.